Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 211. And tonight I went out and I kind of forgot about the video. So this is a difficult video for me because I went out to bars and some drinking. But consistency is important to me. So let's see how this goes. Tonight we are going to be reading story number 2 out of book 5 of the Japanese Family Storehouse. Once again, for anybody who doesn't know, this is a 333-year-old text from feudal Japan from the Edo period discussing responsibility with money. It was translated in 1959 by a gentleman named G.W. Sargent, originally written by a famous Japanese author by the name of Ihara Saikaku. Tonight's story in video number 211 is Yodo Fish for Fortune Building. And it is a rather long story, so let's get started. Man's work to make his living must run on, day and night, like a water wheel harnessed to a swiftly flowing stream. In a day and a night, they say, and let me switch some of the audio here on my computer so I can hear myself better. In a day and a night, they say, a stream may flow 75 leagues. The speed of the advanced tide of years and months has likewise been calculated by our men of science, but although it is known in the moonlight nights of autumn that the last night of the year will be black as pitch, people are invariably unprepared for it when it comes. Tradesmen sharpen their wits well in advance, and craftsmen press on quicker with the various orders in hand, but it is always the same. When the days have slipped by, they are short of the goal. And good. Okay, I do hear that. With sales on account, a man should count on receiving only 1/3 of his dues by New Year. If it is a debt of 10 kanmei, he should spend on the assumption that he will get 3 kanmei back to pay his own debts. It is in things like this that a man should exercise his ingenuity, outfoxing the fox in concealments, and never being caught with his tail exposed. Collect your debts from the easiest places first, a skilled tradesman advised. If you put it off, thinking the money is yours whenever you care to take it, then the time comes when you may find it takes much longer than you thought, or you may arrive when the man is out and have to go back to his house again and again. As a first principle, a debt collector must never grow philosophic about life. Even when the evening bells are sounding from the temples, he must keep his thoughts on his purse, speaking as sharply as ever, and in no way soften his expression. Seating himself on the kitchen step, he accepts no tobacco and drinks no tea. If the lady smiles and starts a conversation, he gives no sign that he sees or hears her. He fixes his gaze on the rows of yellow-tails and pheasants hanging in the kitchen. You seem to have done well with the New Year preparations, he says. I saw 3 koku of rice in the yard. Best local produce, too, it seemed. The rice for the rice cakes is already pounded, I see. Even earlier than usual. Everything here looks new, right down to the lid on the saucepan. Is that your daughter's spring outfit? With the red silk lining and the dappled purple pattern? This is the way to celebrate New Year. Personally, the way my heart keeps jumping up and down like a dancer, I feel more as if it were Bon. Not that, as the song goes, dancing over the pine-clad fields, I found myself a single branch of fern to decorate the front door. I haven't bought a herring roe yet, either. A new outfit for my son is unlikely, I'm afraid. I'd thought that at last I should be able to get some fresh cotton wool to pad the homemade striped kimono he had last year, but even that is going to be difficult. When I look at the way you've managed things here, I can't help thinking you must be millionaires. Perhaps they do their New Year preparations on this scale in Edo, I wouldn't know, but I've seen nothing like it in Kyoto. If he persists in this way, talking nothing but the house's prosperity, making a thorough nuisance of himself, they will leave the other accounts and settle his first. But above all, no matter how chilly the day is, he must take care never to accept a cup of sake or even a bowl of rice and hot water from the house he is picketing. The other side of the question was put by a man who had waded up to his neck through many pools of debts, and who had considerable experience in shooting the rapids at the year's end. In buying on credit, certain things are accepted as a matter of course by both parties, he said. If you ask for fresh rice at a time when the market price per koku is 60 manmei, you are charged 65 and given stale rice into the bargain. If a quart of cooking oil is 2 manmei, you are charged 2 manmei 3 fun. And when the same thing happens with bean paste, sake, firewood, and everything else, it means that you spend your whole year working to fill someone else's pocket, and you never have any money for your own needs. As for the way to settle debts, you should pay the little ones first, putting off the big ones till next year. Even if you have saved and have the money already, never pay until late on New Year's Eve. The collector is generally weary by that time, resigned to accept excuses about paying the rest before the decorations are down. He won't bother to check whether the coppers are short or the silver is underweight, but will rush for the gate clutching his money as though he'd picked up something which didn't belong to him. He will complain later, of course, and swear to have no further dealings with a house like yours, but trade must go on, and when New Year has passed, he will have forgotten, and things will be the same as before. These methods are not strictly honest, I know, but when a man can't make ends meet, it is surprising how his nature changes for the worse. In the village of Yodo, in Yamashiro province, there was a man called Yamazakiya, an oil merchant. His father had sown the seeds of the household's prosperity, but the son detested his inherited trade. The sound of the pounding of his mallets was odious to him. Moreover, he insisted on keeping his shop so unnecessarily spick and span that the family god of luck, who had always hidden himself in the dust on the floor, took fright at the brooms and fled. Custom dwindled, and the shop took on a deserted air. Year by year, the stocks of money grew lower, and soon the sound of mallet and mortar was stilled, and even the household lamps went out through lack of oil. In desperation, and to no avail, Yamazakiya prayed at the nearby treasure temple for the return of his vanished fortune. Left with little except his 2 hands, he found it difficult to think of any scheme which could provide him with more than the shakiest of livelihoods. There were, however, fish in the pools beneath Ko Bridge. Gazing idly into their depths without a net, he would naturally not improve his prospects. Without a net, he could not even catch enlightenment, as holy Hiro had done. But if he really put heart and soul into the task of making this his living, there was no reason, for the slowest ox reached Yodo in the end, and the wheel of fortune, like the Yodo water wheel, was always turning, why he and his household should not prosper a second time. So he changed his line of trade and made daily trips to Kyoto with a load of carp and gibel across his shoulders. "Fish from Yodo!" he cried, and Yodo fish being noted for their excellent flavor, he used to have no difficulty in selling his stock. When people came to know him by sight, they gave him the nickname of Hiro the Buddha from Yodo, and whenever they needed carp or gibel, they would wait specially for him to appear. At this point, he stopped carrying fish all the way from Yodo and bought his carp and gibel in Kyoto, from the supplies brought from Tanba and Omi. He still sold out every day, because people maintained that his fish had a distinctive flavor, and although other merchants were selling the identical fish, they would buy nothing from anyone but Yamazakiya. An established reputation can work wonders for a tradesman. Next, he took to preparing raw fish slices, setting them out on plates, and providing whatever quantity the customer required, even if it was only 5 or 3 funds worth, and Kyoto people being what they are, always ready to economize on food, they made do with these dishes of ready sliced fish even for entertaining guests. Gradually his shop grew fashionable, and it was not long before he was a rich man. He invested his money here and there, opened a money exchange business, and came to employ a great number of assistants. And now that his house was so prosperous, no one ever mentioned the matter of his former fish trade. Living in Kyoto, his tastes in clothing inevitably became more refined, and he tended to copy the styles of the professional set in Shinzaike. But when he appeared in pure Aburaya silks, with his crests of Kinbo brown, stiffened the cuffs of his 3 layers of sleeves with a little padding, wore his neckline not a fraction too high, hung his skirts fashionably low, and graced his shoulders with a cloak of the same silk adjusted with the same care, it was plain to all, without their being told, that he was a personage of distinction. A man may be related to a court noble, or he may be the descendant of a daimyo, but if he has sold his ancient sword to buy a meal, if his luck has gone to heaven and his armor to the pawn shop, neither lineage, sword, nor armor will serve him when he needs them. The only things which matter, they say, are wisdom and wit, though these two are nothing unless you keep them by you while making your living. Of all the crises in a man's life, there is none more terrible than the reckoning day at the end of the year. If you treat its approach casually and start thinking about it only after half the 12th moon has gone, you will be too late. So let's think about this, for a second. I think when they say half the 12th moon, they're kind of referring to if you only think about it on December 15th. Right? Like roughly, if we say that there's 1 moon per month, and we say that half the moon being gone is like the mid-month, then let's pretend that these people are settling up on January 1st and you only think about your yearly losses or gains 2 weeks before the year has ended. So you don't do a mid-year check, you don't do a 3-month check. You just wait till the very last minute of that year and looks like you didn't have any savings for that year. I think that's what they're referring to. Neither lineage, sword, nor armor will serve him when he needs them. The only things which matter, they say, are wisdom and wit, though these two are nothing unless you keep them by you while making your living. Of all the cries in a man's life, there is none more terrible than the reckoning day at the end of the year. If you treat its approach casually and start thinking about it only after half the 12th moon has gone, you will be too late. If even the most insignificant shrines and temples trouble to have their paper charms and New Year fans ready on time, craftsmen and merchants who sit back with a complacent 13 moon expression on their faces, watching the flowers of poverty grow, can hardly complain when they find them suddenly in full bloom. If you wind up the old year with tolerable success, the feeling of the new spring is wonderful. But when you are so hard pressed that it is necessary to avoid paying the doctor's bill, or to give the apprentices their old cotton garments to wear again, revamped with washy homemade dyes, even if you scrape through, the spirit of spring is lost. In Kyoto, the townsmen meet the new year in a variety of ways. But although the customs which one most readily associates with the emperor's capital are things like meditating a poem about the first day of spring, the people with leisure to do this are rare. The great majority have time for nothing but the weary struggle to pay their bills. An assistant in Yamazakiya's fishmonger business set up his own by opening a small rice shop. His capital was a meager 5 kanmei, but he scattered credit sales in every direction like ground beans caught in a wind, and when it came to collecting his debts, he saw the conditions in the debtors' tiny houses. He felt too much sympathy to press his demands. In one household, although it was already the 28th of the last moon, and a short moon this year, with only today and tomorrow left, they were still snatching odd moments between a host of chores to weave a length of cotton cloth on a loom, intending to sell it cheaply to pay for the 100 things needed for New Year. As he reached another house, they had just called in an old iron dealer to value a metal mirror frame, a rat trap with bronze netting, a small rake, and a kettle stand with a broken leg. But the man rejected them all. They were worth no more than 130 zeni altogether, he said, and it would be a waste of his time to buy them. After he had gone, the husband and wife spoke to each other without realizing that someone was listening. Paying any part of our debts is out of the question this year, they said. If only 500 zeni would fall from heaven. With that amount, we could get through easily, and even afford to scatter a few beans for luck. When they were joined by their daughter, a little girl at the most charming age, he felt all the more sorry for them. How many more nights do I sleep before it's New Year's Day? He asked. It will be a new year when we have some rice to eat, they replied. Noticing the debt collector's presence at last, they glared at him with such hostility that he retreated from the door in alarm without saying a word about his money. At the next house, he was confronted by an argumentative woman who lost no time in giving him a piece of her mind. We are always getting people from your shop asking for their rice money, she shouted. There's nothing wrong with borrowing money, everyone does it. But you people say the most dreadful things to us. One of you said he'd take his money now if he had to pull my husband's head off. My husband shook till he dropped, and he hasn't moved from his bed since. It's really shameful having your head pulled off for 4 or 5 fun. She went on shouting and sobbing, and he saw it would be too much trouble to argue with her. Look after him well, he said as he turned to go. If he's still alive, I'll discuss matters with him in the spring. At another house, apparently highly pleased with himself, a man was setting out an offering of sake before an old kimono. The under parts of its sleeves were patched, and beneath its faded green dye traces of an erstwhile light blue were visible. What a splendid constitution this kimono has, he was saying. For the last 17 or 18 years, it has spent summer and winter alike in the pawn shop, but now it has come home to keep New Year with its master. This will be a happy New Year. Well then, the rice dealer, coming forward at that point, let's settle our accounts. The man took the bill, and against the entry of 18 manmei 2 fun, he wrote, paid, 1 manmei 6 fun. He produced a dubious-looking silver coin. I weighed this one and put it by specially for you, but if you don't want it, say so. He turned his attention to his cat's fleas and took no further notice of the visitor. There was no choice. To refuse the money was only to increase the loss, so the dealer took it and went his way. Later, calling at another house, he found that the master was not at home. The lady of the house, a tolerably attractive woman who had arranged her coiffure with particular care and changed into an unusually fine sash for the occasion, was sitting with copies of The Romance of Lady Usuyuki and The Tales of Ice open before her, surrounded by a crowd of debt collectors. With an air of great composure, she was discussing which plays would be most popular this spring. Where has your husband gone? They asked. He found his wife too old for his taste, she replied, laughing gaily. He has deserted me. Make him give you a divorce, they cried. There are plenty of us willing to take care of you. A few more jests of this sort, and their hearts had erased the entries in their account books. They went away empty-handed. No creature can rival man in his combination of intelligence and stupidity. Be constantly on the alert, for there are tricksters of every kind in even the poorest of debtors' houses. In credit sales, the secret is to guard against the growth of friendly relationships with your customers, no matter how frequently you have done business with them. There may be times when intimacy does no harm, but they are rare. Even if you have been given a deposit, if your customer's debts start to mount up higher than ever before, cut him dead and give him back his money as a sign that you have finished with him. Merchants who allow themselves to be drawn on and swell their losses to huge proportions are victims of nothing but their own short-sighted greed. This rice merchant, too, now changed to ready cash deals and sold only by small measures. For 4 or 5 years, his luck grew better and better, but 1 year he started supplying rice in bulk to certain silk-weaving firms in Nishigen, and although there was an agreement that the payment should be made for the last consignment before the next was delivered, payments were overdue year after year. The accounts balanced on paper, but the money was never at hand and served no useful purpose. In time, the grinding of his hulling mortars was heard no more, and he had nothing left except the small wooden boxes with which he had once measured out his rice sales. Selling on credit needs to be approached with the greatest caution. And I think that story speaks for itself at the very end. Selling on credit needs to be approached with the greatest caution. If you are selling to people and they are paying you with credit that you are backing, then be prepared when they don't pay. I actually had a great-grandfather, I think it was, a great-grandfather, who during the Depression ran a grocery store, and he gave people food on credit. And unfortunately, the people never paid him back, and he lost his grocery store. And I don't have a lot of detail around that, and I don't really have a moral to that. It's just, a small fact from my family history that if you sell things on credit, people will not always pay you back. And if you want to run an enterprise that keeps going and going like the Energizer Bunny, you need to make sure that you actually have the cash at some point. So you either need to be very cautious when selling with credit, which I wouldn't suggest, or simply accept cash. Make it a very straightforward deal. Run your business in a very straightforward way. I think that's my number one suggestion. So that is it for video number 211. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a fabulous evening.